Melody, a 14-year-old girl with strangely colored eyes on blue, one light brownish going through stressful days. With less than 2 weeks until she turns 15, instead of feeling excited, Melody is engulfed in loneliness and fatigue. Her parents, with their well-meaning expectations, keep urging her to organize a birthday party. They want her to be happy, to fit in, and to have memorable moments with friends. But Melody doesn't want that. She doesn't want to be the center of attention. She doesn't want to face awkward questions from classmates she only knows by name but isn't really close to. Melody always feels different. The uneven freckles on her face, her mismatched eyes, and her introverted personality make her feel isolated from the world around her. Inside, a silent fear creeps in. If she holds a party, will anyone come? Or worse, will only 1 or 2 people show up, leaving her in an awkward and embarrassing situation? The thought sends a chill down her spine every time her parents mention planning the party. Finally, after many arguments, Melody decides to lie. She tells her parents that she will go to the nearby arcade to check it out as a way to consider hosting her birthday party there. But in reality, she has no intention of organizing anything. She just wants to escape the house, away from her parents' scrutinizing eyes, and have some quiet time to think. It was already getting dark when Melody stepped out of the house. Gray clouds hung low in the sky, casting a gloomy look over the street. The wind blew gently, but it was cold enough to make her shiver. Her sneakers tapped lightly on the empty road, each step increasing her sense of isolation. Melody felt as if she were stepping into another world, a world where only she existed. The arcade appeared before her, an old building with faintly flickering neon lights. The parking lot was empty, not a soul in sight. Melody stood at the door, seeing her reflection in the foggy glass. She hated looking at herself, hated her uneven face, hated the freckles, hated it all. Her eyes reflected a deep dissatisfaction as she tucked her hair behind her ear and pulled the door open. The air inside was colder than she expected. A strange feeling enveloped Melody as soon as she stepped in. The dim light from the fluorescent bulbs on the ceiling cast long, distorted shadows that seemed to move. The old arcade machines emitted sporadic noises, sometimes a piercing beep, sometimes distorted laughter. Melody felt goosebumps rise on her skin. She wondered if she was entering a place not meant for humans. But she didn't turn back. With a mix of curiosity and fear, Melody ventured deeper into the arcade, unaware that she was stepping into a completely different world, a place where ordinary rules no longer applied. The glass door of the arcade let out a dry click as Melody pushed it open. The cold air inside immediately enveloped her, completely different from the gentle chill of the evening outside. Melody paused for a moment, feeling as though she had just stepped into another world. The smell of mildew mixed with the scent of aged plastic hit her nose, making her grimace. Her eyes scanned the space in front of her, and immediately, a strange feeling rose within her. The arcade was deserted, not a single soul in sight. Rows of arcade machines stretched endlessly, their screens flickering weakly, as if struggling to cling to the last remnants of life. Some machines emitted sporadic beeps, interspersed with distorted sounds, resembling laughter but not quite laughter. Melody shivered. She recalled the time she had visited the arcade as a child, when it was always bustling and noisy, filled with laughter and excited cheers. But now, it resembled a forgotten corpse more than a place of entertainment. The light in the room was uneven, casting long, eerie shadows across the floor. Melody walked slowly, her sneakers making faint squeaking sounds on the old tiled floor. She felt as though invisible eyes were watching her every step, even though it was clear no one was there. A sense of unease crept into her, but at the same time, curiosity pushed her to venture deeper inside. The arcade machines were placed close together, making the pathways between them cramped and suffocating. Melody passed by a machine with a cracked screen, its light flickering incessantly, creating distorted and incomprehensible images. She stopped for a moment, gazing at the screen. A shadow flickered across it, But when she focused her gaze, it was gone. Melody stepped back, feeling as though she had just seen something that didn't belong to this world. Beyond the main arcade area, Melody noticed a narrow hallway leading further inside. At the end of the hallway, she saw a strange door. It was both closed and open, as if existing in two states simultaneously. Melody blinked, trying to comprehend what she was seeing. The door appeared ordinary, matching the style and size of other doors in the arcade, but something about it felt off. Part of the door was shut, while the other part seemed wide open, revealing a deep, dark void beyond. She walked slowly toward the door, fear and curiosity intertwining within her. The air around her grew colder, as if the temperature was dropping with each step closer. Melody raised her hand, intending to touch the door, but a chill ran down her spine, stopping her in her tracks. A faint noise came from behind the doorknob, loud, but enough to make her heart race faster. Melody took a deep breath. She knew she shouldn't step through, but she couldn't resist the urge to find out what was waiting for her on the other side. Just a little peek, she whispered to herself, then gently pushed the strange door. A rush of cold air swept out, and Melody stepped through, leaving the familiar world behind her. The strange door opened with a soft creak, as if it hadn't been touched in decades. Melody stepped through, and the cold immediately enveloped her, stronger than anything she had ever felt before. The space inside was completely different, as if she had just entered a parallel world, a place not belonging to the reality she knew. In front of her was a gigantic arcade, vast beyond belief. The walls stretched endlessly, with no windows, no escape. The flickering lights from the arcade machines created a bizarre glow, just enough to see around but not clear enough to illuminate everything. Melody felt swallowed by this space, tiny and alone in a place so vast and mysterious. The arcade machines here were unlike anything she had seen before. Some had distorted screens, displaying inexplicable images, blurred faces, chaotic numbers, and sometimes figures resembling moving shadows. Melody approached one machine, its screen displaying a game she had never heard of. The title was written in a strange language, the characters twisting and coiling as if alive. She raised her hand to touch the controls, but just as her finger neared, the screen emitted a piercing beep, startling her into stepping back. Fear began to creep in. Melody looked around, trying to find an exit, but everything seemed like an endless maze. The arcade machines lined up in long rows, creating winding paths as if leading her somewhere she didn't want to go. The sounds from the machines grew louder, no longer sporadic beeps, but strange noises, resembling whispers. Melody felt as if someone was talking to her, but when she turned around, no one was there. The continuous flickering lights strained her eyes, but she dared not close them. A strange feeling crept into her mind. She was no longer sure she was in an arcade. This space felt like a living entity, observing and playing with her. Melody felt trapped in a game she didn't know the rules for, unsure how to escape. The strange noise echoed again, louder this time, as if something was moving closer to her. Melody turned her head, but saw nothing beyond the arcade machines and darkness. She tried to calm herself, telling herself it was just imagination, but the sense of danger grew clearer. It seemed as if some entity was hiding in the shadows, watching her every move, waiting for a moment to appear. Melody continued walking, each step heavy with anxiety. She knew she shouldn't be here, but couldn't find a way out. This space followed no rules, and she felt lost in a place not meant for humans. A distorted laugh rang out from afar, making her pause. Melody took a deep breath, trying to remain calm, but her heart pounded so fast it felt like it might explode. She kept moving forward, unaware she was drawing closer to something dangerous, a supernatural entity waiting for her in the darkness. Melody stood in front of a game machine, its screen flickering continuously, creating incomprehensible images. The game on the screen was unlike anything she had seen before. Instead of familiar symbols like characters or objectives, the screen displayed a series of strange shape spirals, faint streaks of light, and unfamiliar characters belonging to no language she knew. Melody raised her hand, her fingers trembling as they touched the large control button in the center. As soon as she pressed the button, the screen changed immediately. A deep sound echoed, not like the music of a game, but like a heavy sigh. Melody was startled, but didn't withdraw her hand. The images on the screen began to move, as if the game was starting. But instead of displaying a familiar interface, it showed a blurry image, like a long road leading into darkness. Melody tried to control it using the buttons, but nothing happened. Each time she pressed a button, the screen changed, displaying increasingly bizarre images of a faint face, a hand reaching for something, and finally, a pair of glowing red eyes staring at her. Melody backed away, feeling as though the game was watching her instead of her controlling it. She moved to another machine, hoping it would function normally, but things were no better. This machine emitted a series of small, rapid beeps, as if trying to warn her about something. Its screen displayed disjointed images, like a broken video clip. Melody tried to control it, but the buttons seemed ineffective. Instead, each press revealed a new image, increasingly mysterious and frightening. A silhouette appeared on the screen, standing still for a few seconds before disappearing. Melody felt as though she had just seen someone, but couldn't be sure. The sense of unease grew stronger. These game machines weren't operating normally. They seemed alive, reacting to her presence. Melody looked around, trying to find a machine that seemed normal. But all were the same, strange, distorted, and full of confusing images. Sometimes, she felt as though these machines were communicating with each other, emitting small sounds like whispers. Melody couldn't understand what they were saying, but the feeling of isolation and eeriness became increasingly clear. A loud noise suddenly echoed from behind, startling Melody. She turned around but saw nothing, except shadows and faint light from the game machines. The noise sounded like metal clashing, but had something unnatural, like a distorted sound. Melody felt her heart beating faster, her hand gripping the edge of a nearby game machine for balance. The space around her seemed to change. The light from the screens flickered more intensely, almost making her dizzy. Strange sounds began to echo from everywhere, like footsteps but irregular. Melody felt as though something was moving in the darkness, getting closer to her. She tried to stay calm, but the feeling of fear and danger completely enveloped her. Melody knew she shouldn't be there, but didn't know how to escape. Melody continued to walk through the cold and eerie space of the arcade, the flickering lights from the game machines following her like sleepless eyes. She didn't know how long she had been walking, only feeling the fear and isolation tightening around her mind. But then, in a hidden corner, she saw something different. A row of wax statues stood silently, the light from the screens casting distorted shadows on them, as if they were moving. Melody moved closer, her sense of unease growing with each step. As she got nearer, she realized the statues weren't random shapes. They looked exactly like real people, every detail replicated so perfectly it was frightening. And then, she realized what shocked her the most. These statues didn't just look like real people, they were identical to her classmates. Melody stood frozen, her eyes glued to each familiar face. These were people she saw every day at school, people she had laughed and talked with, shared everyday stories with. But here, they were no longer themselves. They stood still, motionless, with empty eyes and frozen smiles, as if trapped in an eternal moment. She walked slowly past each statue, a shiver running down her spine. Then she saw Jason. He stood there, his handsome face and warm smile, which she had secretly admired, now cold and soulless. Melody felt her heart tighten. She wanted to call his name, to wake him up, but she knew it was useless. This wasn't the real Jason. This was just a distorted and silent version of him, imprisoned in a lifeless form. But what caught her attention next was the statue standing next to Jason. It was Jess, his close friend. Jess, with her golden hair and radiant smile, always drew everyone's attention. Melody felt a surge of emotions, jealousy, anger, and an indescribable strangeness. Why was Jess here, standing next to Jason, as if they belonged together? This feeling cut deep into her mind, making her unable to control herself. Melody moved closer to Jess's statue, her eyes blazing with a mix of anger and pain. She reached out, feeling the coldness of the wax under her palm. And then, as if unable to bear it any longer, she pushed the statue hard. Jess's statue fell to the floor with a heavy thud, echoing in the empty arcade space. Melody gasped, but as soon as the statue hit the ground, something strange happened. The space around her seemed to shake, the lights from the game machines flickering more wildly. A bizarre sound echoed, like a muffled scream, emanating from deep within the darkness. Melody stepped back, feeling as though she had made a terrible mistake. The other statues seemed to be changing too. The light reflecting on them made them look as if they were moving, as if they were coming to life. Melody felt her legs stiffen, unable to move. She could only stand there, facing the wax statues that were no longer just lifeless forms. She knew she had awakened something, a dangerous and powerful entity, waiting for the chance to emerge. Melody walked through the dim space of the arcade, where the lights from the game machines flickered weakly like dying lamps. Each of her footsteps echoed strangely, as if the floor beneath was not wood or carpet, but something soft and alive. The cold air enveloped her, making her feel as if she were trapped in another world, a world with no escape. She stopped when she felt something unusual under a corner of the carpet. Melody bent down, her hand trembling as she lifted a corner of the carpet. What she saw beneath froze her in place. Long, slimy red strands, resembling blood vessels, lay tangled beneath the carpet. They weren't just lying still, but seemed to be moving, twitching slightly as if breathing. Melody stepped back, a feeling of horror spreading throughout her body. This was not a normal arcade. This was something else, a living entity, and she was standing at its center. She tried to stay calm, but just then, a strange sound echoed from somewhere in the darkness. It wasn't the sound of machinery or footsteps, but a deep, prolonged noise, like the moan of a wounded creature. Melody turned her head to look around, but the lights from the game machines began to go out one by one, making the space increasingly dark. She felt as if she were being surrounded, swallowed by the encroaching darkness. The sense of danger became clear. Melody not only felt scared but also sensed a presence, something watching her, moving in the dark. She heard something like breathing, heavy and intermittent, coming from all directions. She tried to step back, but her feet felt stuck, unable to move. The red strands beneath the carpet seemed to be crawling up, wrapping around her legs, pulling her closer to the darkness. Melody screamed, but her voice was muffled by the strange, moaning echoing throughout the space. She felt her heart racing, her breath becoming rapid. The last light from a game machine went out completely, leaving her in total darkness. She couldn't see anything, but she sensed the presence of something very close, very close. A cold breath brushed against the back of her neck, making her shiver. Melody turned around, but there was nothing but darkness. However, she knew she was no longer alone. Something was here, waiting, and it had no intention of letting her leave. The red strands beneath continued to tighten around her legs, pulling her down, as if wanting to swallow her into its depths. Melody felt she was surrounded by a dangerous, powerful, and incomprehensible entity. She couldn't run, couldn't hide. She could only stand there, facing a nightmare gradually becoming reality. Melody walked through the increasingly dark and cold space, feeling as if the darkness was coming to life, enveloping her. The strange noises continued to echo, as if some entity was watching her from all directions. She tried to stay calm, but each step carried an ever-growing fear. Suddenly, from within the darkness, a voice rang out. Melody. The voice was deep and clear, but it didn't sound human. It had a metallic, cold tone, yet there was a strange fluidity that immediately caught her attention. Melody startled and turned around, her eyes fixed on the source of the sound. The darkness gradually faded, revealing a tall figure, standing motionless in the space. It was a rowboat, or at least. It looked like a human made of metal. "I am Lucas," the entity spoke, its eyes emitting a pale blue light, illuminating Melody's face. "I know you, and I can help you." Melody stepped back, a sense of unease flooding her. Lucas looked human, but his movements were too smooth, too perfect, lacking any sign of life. "Who are you? How do you know me?" Her voice trembled, but she tried to remain calm. Lucas took a step towards her, not fast, not slow, as if giving her time to adjust. "I have been observing you for a long time. I know you are trying to escape this place, and I know the reason you are here." Melody frowned, the strange feeling growing stronger. "The reason I am here? What are you talking about?" Lucas didn't answer immediately. He tilted his head, his cold gaze resting on her hand. "The cuts on your hand," he said, his voice deeper, carrying something akin to concern. "They tell many things." Melody started, quickly hiding her hand behind her back. The small cuts she had tried to conceal now became the focus of the conversation. "You don't know anything about me," she said, her voice faltering with panic. Lucas shook his head slowly, his gaze never leaving her. "I know more than you think. Those cuts are not just physical marks. They are expressions of deep pain, a despair you cannot escape. And that is why you are here, Melody." She felt her heart pounding. How did he know this? How could a robot understand emotions she couldn't even name? "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice growing smaller, as if speaking to an entity beyond her understanding. Lucas took another step, the distance between them now only a few steps. "I want nothing. I only want to help you. But to do that, you need to trust me. And you need to understand that everything here has a reason. What you are facing is not just a game. It is reality, and you have a role in it." Melody stood silent, feeling as if she was being pulled into a vortex she couldn't escape. Lucas was unlike anything she had ever encountered. He was both terrifying and mysterious, yet carried a strange allure she couldn't explain. She knew that from this moment, everything would change forever. Melody felt the air around her freezing, each breath growing heavier. Lucas's eyes, with their cold pale blue light, seemed to pierce deep into her mind. The arcade space now felt stranger than ever. Distant moans, flickering lights, and a sense of complete isolation made Melody feel suffocated by fear. But what Lucas said next nearly left her speechless. "Melody?" Lucas's voice echoed, deeper, carrying an unmistakable seriousness. "You are not really here. Everything you are seeing, feeling is a dream. A world created by your mind to escape the truth." Melody stepped back, her eyes wide, looking at Lucas as if he had just said something unacceptable. "What are you saying? No, that's not right. I'm here. I can feel everything. I can..." She stopped, her voice trembling, unable to finish the sentence. Lucas didn't move, but the light from his eyes seemed to dim, flickering like a dying lamp. "You are lying unconscious in the bathroom at your home, Melody, after you hurt yourself. The cuts on your hand, they are not just marks. They are your cries for help. And your mind created this place so you wouldn't have to face the truth." Melody felt as if the whole world around her was collapsing. Lucas's words echoed in her head, each one like a knife cutting into her mind. She shook her head, trying to deny it, but couldn't stop the blurry images from appearing. She remembered the bathroom, the pale yellow light, the sound of dripping water. She remembered the cold feel of the blade on her skin, and the pain both physical and emotional that she couldn't bear. "No, that's not true. You're lying. I didn't do that. I don't..." Melody screamed, but her voice was choked by panic. She felt like she was falling into a bottomless abyss, where everything was murky and uncontrollable. Lucas took another step towards her, but his body began to change. The metallic lines on him started to crack, pieces falling to the floor, making sharp sounds. I can't stay longer, Melody. This world is disintegrating just like me. It isn't real. And you need to wake up. You need to face the truth. Melody looked at Lucas, tears streaming down, but she couldn't say anything. She just stood there, motionless, watching the entity before her disintegrate piece by piece. Lucas's blue eyes faded, the last light disappeared. His body shattered, metal pieces fell to the floor, merging into the darkness. The space around began to shake. The lights from the game machines flickered wildly before going out completely. Melody felt herself being pulled away from this place, as if reality was swallowing her. Lucas's final words echoed, gentle yet powerful. Face the truth, Melody. It's the only way you can escape the darkness. Then everything fell silent. Melody could no longer feel anything, just an endless void, cold and lonely. But deep in her mind, she knew she couldn't run forever. The truth awaited her, and she had to face it, no matter how frightening it was. The space around Melody became chaotic, as if the entire world was collapsing beneath her feet. Piercing shrieks echoed in the air, shaking everything. The arcade machines began to disintegrate, pieces of metal and plastic falling down, making sharp sounds. The light from the screens flickered madly before going out completely, leaving deep darkness. Melody felt the darkness spreading, engulfing everything, and she knew she had to run, to escape this place before it completely vanished. Her heart raced, each breath choked by fear. Melody tried to stay calm, but everything around her seemed to be against her. The arcade walls, once her prison, now seemed to melt, turning into a black liquid flowing to the floor and spreading everywhere. She felt that darkness was not just a physical phenomenon. It lived, it breathed, and it was hunting her. No, I have to get out, Melody told herself, her legs trembling but still trying to move. She ran past rows of arcade machines where familiar sounds were now just hollow echoes. Her eyes scanned the space, searching for any sign of an exit, but the darkness seemed to mock her, closing in more, like a predator waiting for the final moment. Suddenly, in a dark corner of the arcade, Melody saw a glowing red sign, Emergency Exit. The light from that sign was faint, but in this situation, it was like the only ray of hope. Without thinking further, she rushed towards it, her legs almost tripping on the violently shaking floor. The darkness behind her seemed to realize her intent, and it moved faster, like a black wave surging, wanting to swallow her before she could escape. Melody ran with all her might, breath quickened, heart pounding so hard she thought she might collapse at any moment. But she didn't stop. She couldn't. The shrieking from the darkness behind grew louder, as if it was furious that she dared to defy it. The arcade walls beside her had completely disappeared, leaving only an endless void where darkness covered everything. Finally, Melody reached the emergency exit sign. She saw a small door, painted red, right below the sign. Without hesitation, she pushed the door, but it didn't open immediately. She used all her strength, slamming against the door, the sound of metal clashing echoing in the space. The darkness behind was closer than ever, like a black storm, sweeping everything in its path. "Please open," Melody screamed, her voice blending with the shrieks of the darkness. Finally, the door swung open, and Melody dashed through it, not looking back. She felt the darkness almost touch her, but it was blocked by the door slamming shut behind her. Melody fell to the cold ground, breathing heavily, her body trembling from exhaustion. She didn't know where she was, but at least she had escaped the darkness. But deep in her mind, she knew this wasn't the end. The darkness was still there, waiting, and it wouldn't stop hunting her. Melody looked up, trying to gather herself, and prepared for what awaited her ahead. Melody opened the door with a chaotic feeling inside, both fearful and hopeful. The light from the other side of the door flooded in, dispelling the darkness that threatened her. But that light was not complete liberation. It carried a strange, cold quality as if it did not belong to this world. Melody stepped through the threshold, her legs trembling, and when she looked up, she realized she had returned to the original arcade. The space around was now eerily quiet. The arcade machines stood in place, but they no longer emitted familiar beeping sounds or bright lights. Instead, they were like silent shadows, covered in a vague layer of dust. Melody looked around, trying to determine where she was, but everything still felt unreal. The cold air enveloped her, making her feel isolated and small in this vast space. She walked, step by step, her eyes constantly scanning everything around. A tense feeling rose within her, as if something was not right. Melody could not fully believe that she had escaped the strange space. The darkness, the shrieks, and the image of Lucas disintegrating still haunted her, like indelible fragments of memory. Suddenly, a voice called out from behind. "What are you doing here?" Melody startled and turned around, seeing an arcade employee standing there, eyes suspicious. The man wore a uniform with a dark blue jacket, but his expression was not as friendly as typical staff. "We've been closed for a while. You're not allowed to be here. Leave immediately." Melody felt a chill run down her spine. The voice of the employee carried a strange feeling, as if it didn't entirely belong to this world. But she had no other choice. She nodded, trying to stay calm, then walked past the man to exit. Each step carried the fear that the darkness would reappear, that she hadn't truly escaped it. As she stepped through the door leading out of the arcade, Melody felt the light from outside shining on her face. It was the light of reality, of the world she once knew. No more pitch-black darkness, no more eerie shrieks. Melody stood there, took a deep breath, and realized she had escaped the strange space. But the relief didn't last long. Melody looked down at her hands and realized the cuts were still there, a reminder that everything she experienced was not just a dream. The bizarre images, mysterious rules, and supernatural entities still haunted her. Melody knew that, even though she had escaped that place, the darkness would always exist, waiting for the chance to pull her back. She walked in the daylight, but the cold and isolated feeling still clung to her. Melody wasn't sure if she had truly returned to reality, or if this was just another layer of illusion. But she had no choice but to keep walking, trying to find herself among the fragments of her mind. And deep down, she knew the battle with the darkness was not truly over. Melody stepped into her house, the door closing behind her with a dry creak. The space in her small apartment seemed to have changed, no longer bringing the familiar and safe feeling it once did. Instead, it was cold and isolated, as if the darkness she had just escaped was still stealthily following her, creeping into every corner. Each step of Melody echoed in the deadly silence, making her feel like she was venturing deeper into a place she didn't belong. She walked into the bathroom, intending to wash her face to dispel the heavy feeling in her heart. But when she turned on the light, Melody froze. On the sink and mirror, dried bloodstains appeared clearly, scattered like the remnants of a nightmare she couldn't fully recall. She stepped back, her heart pounding in her chest, her breath quickening. Those bloodstains were not just evidence of what she had been through, but also a reminder that her reality had been distorted, that she couldn't escape what was haunting her. Melody stared into the mirror. Her face was pale, her eyes shadowed, as if she had just survived a brutal battle. But the scariest thing wasn't her reflection in the mirror. It was the feeling that something was looking back at her from the other side. A vague, invisible entity, yet full of power and danger, as if it was the part of darkness in her soul, waiting to take her over completely. "No, I can't let this continue," Melody mumbled, her voice trembling. She took a cloth and started wiping away the bloodstains on the sink and mirror. Each wipe felt like an attempt to erase part of what had happened, as if she could cleanse her mind just by cleaning the space around her. But even after everything was wiped clean, the eerie feeling didn't disappear. It remained there, lurking in every dark corner of the apartment and every thought she had. Melody sat down at her desk, her hands trembling as she picked up a pen. She knew she couldn't continue living like this, that she needed to face what was happening. She began writing a letter to her parents, each word a form of release. In the letter, she admitted that she was having problems, that what she experienced wasn't just fleeting nightmares, but a part of her, a part she couldn't control. "I need your help, Mom and Dad," she wrote, tears streaming down her face. "I can't do this alone. I'm scared. I feel like I'm losing myself. Please help me." As she put down the pen, Melody felt like she had taken another step toward escaping the darkness. But she also knew this was just the beginning. The darkness, the supernatural entity, and the mysterious rules were still there, waiting for her to confront them. Melody looked up, her eyes shining with determination. She wouldn't let the darkness take her, but to do that, she had to face herself and what lay deep within her soul. Melody sat quietly on the old sofa in the living room, the dim light from the table lamp casting strange shadows on the wall. The space around her was so silent that each tick of the wall clock seemed to echo in her head, each beat reminding her of the passing time. She felt enveloped by a layer of cold, isolating air, as if her apartment no longer belonged to this world, but was an intermediary place between reality and what she had just escaped. Melody opened her phone, played a gentle tune, hoping the familiar melodies could soothe the haunting echoes still lingering in her mind. The music filled the space, but instead of bringing peace, it created a strange sensation, as if each note was melting into the darkness surrounding her. Melody closed her eyes, trying to focus on her breathing, but images of Lucas, the mysterious rules, and the supernatural entity still appeared vividly in her mind, like irreparable fragments. She opened her eyes, looked around the room. Everything was still in place, but this space now carried a sense of unfamiliarity, as if it had been altered by what she had just experienced. Melody felt a vague fear, not from the supernatural, but from within herself. She realized that the darkness didn't just exist outside, but also lay deep within her soul as a part of her she couldn't erase. The doorbell rang, pulling Melody out of her grim thoughts. She stood up, her legs trembling, and walked to open the door. Her parents stood there, their eyes worried but full of love. Melody felt a wave of emotion rise within her, as if she had found a ray of light in the darkness. She invited them in, and as she sat down with them, she began to recount everything, every detail of what she had gone through, the fear and loneliness she faced. "I want to change," Melody said, her voice filled with determination. "I can't let these things control my life anymore. I need help, and I want to start over." Her parents nodded, their eyes full of understanding. They didn't say much, just quietly held her hand, as a promise that they would always be there for her, no matter what happened. Melody felt a sense of relief, as if she had crossed another threshold, not to escape, but to confront. She realized that sometimes, the greatest fear is the catalyst for change, to begin anew. The darkness was still there, but now, Melody knew she was no longer alone, and in the dim light of the room, she felt ready to face whatever awaited her ahead.